for attending this press conference. This afternoon, the President will be opening the Housing Expo. And I hope that Guyanese would be paying careful attention to his speech. He will take the opportunity to speak extensively about the changes in Guyana over the past few years, particularly in the past 2 years, the post-COVID period. And for any independent, unbiased observer who wants to be fair and to assess the changes in Guyana, particularly in the construction sector, you would see that Guyana has become veritably a construction site, the whole of our country. And that did not happen by chance. It happened largely because of a deliberate strategy of the PPP civic government. It's consistent with the promise we made when we were campaigning, and it is also supported by the plans and programs of our government. If you contrast what happened under the APNU period, you would come away with the clear impression that this dynamism would not have been possible had it not been for the programs and the support initiatives that we put in place. And every Guyanese, every single Guyanese, regardless of who they voted for, their race or their religion, every adult Guyanese now has the possibility, if they have not owned a home as yet, of owning one. And this will not happen under any other government. Our history bears this out. From the periods when we were in office before 2015, the massive boom in Guyana, the changes in the housing landscape of our country, and now once again, the return to this massive change that's taking place. So, to give you an idea, once again, because we have done this before several times, of what we have put in place in the past few years, we're now spending $200 billion. $200 billion on developing 40,000 house lots. We promised 50,000 house lots. Hopefully we'll get to about 40,000 by the end of this year. We promised 50,000 new house lots before the end of 2025 in our 5 years term. We're on course to deliver on that promise. It's a rare thing for a political party to make a promise and to deliver it, especially in the context of Guyana. And we are on course to fulfilling that promise. $200 billion spent in this sector is equivalent to about 30% of all the oil money that we've received so far, or we've spent so far, 30% of it. So for those who believe they're not getting or benefiting from the oil resources, this is how it gets transferred to our people. I explained before that it takes about $5 million to develop one house lot, and a lot of that is to put in all the infrastructure, 5 million Guyana dollars. And that plot of land is sold between maybe $150,000 to $200,000 and maybe $2.5 million. That's the range. But most of it is sold at the low income level, less than $200,000. Most of it goes to people. So it's a subsidy. It costs about 1/40 of what is actually spent on preparing the plot of land. That means a transfer of wealth. We have also, policy-wise, we've been building core homes. We've been building young professional homes. So it's not just the land, it's also getting people to own homes through government initiatives. We have introduced a subsidy for low-income construction. That is the cement and steel initiative. We have given up quite a bit of taxes to ensure that we have a lower mortgage rate by the changes that we have given, the incentives we have given to the banks to lower the interest rate. We've removed almost all the taxes on building materials, on most building materials. We've been upgrading quite a few community roads. Over 3,000 community roads in housing areas have been upgraded. We have provided incentives to builders. We passed the local content law that allowed a whole spurt of construction for apartment buildings and homes to rent to foreigners, so that the Guyanese and only Guyanese can benefit from this lucrative opportunity of renting their properties to foreigners employed in the oil and gas industry, particularly by the main companies and the first-tier contractors. So these are just some of the things that we have done in the sector. And Guyanese will, I'm waiting for a call from abroad. So Guyanese will, of course, get an opportunity if they visit this weekend, and I hope they all visit the Building Expo, to see the changes and to understand that this did not happen by chance. And if you're unbiased and you contrast it with what took place on the APNU, they had nothing of the sort, absolutely nothing. I didn't even speak about our land policy, where we work with a number, particularly local people, to provide some land, small plots of land, maybe a couple of acres, on which hundreds of millions of US dollars have been spent or is being spent to build 7 international hotels that would employ 3,000 people. I didn't even talk about that aspect of building, the commercial type building. Many properties that are going up now because of our government's policies and also the incentives we've given to stimulate commercial type construction, which will generate employment opportunities for people too. So I did not even speak about that. I was just speaking about the housing construction. But that's a whole new area that only started when we returned to office. And you see it everywhere in the country, from shopping malls to hotels to buildings for rentals, etc. And you can experience it. You see it when you travel around the country. So it doesn't require APNU to tell you about it or anyone, or the PPP to even mention it. What have they done? They would only point to maybe a couple of issues, or they would find fault with some building, some houses not built properly, etc. But they don't have a program to do this, to ensure that everyone benefits from this. So I ask people to think about this. Think about this. This is one way that the government is giving back and investing in our people. Secondly, I see the return, every week they return to the cost of living issue. Every week they return to the cost of living issue. So they distort what the president said when he made a comparison around the world about food price increases. And it is true that food prices went up in Guyana, but he pointed out comparably around the world how this has gone up. And a lot of it, we have been able to mitigate some of the price increases because of the removal of taxes and also because of our supply response in Guyana. So they took a figure that he mentioned about an index and tried to point out, he was speaking about indices. So you can have a change in the index, which is slightly lower than the actual increase of an individual item that forms the basket that makes up the index. And they distort it. But I don't even believe that APNU is sophisticated enough for the others to understand the difference in when you speak about indices versus individual prices. So if you have a movement of the index by 3.8%, it doesn't mean that the price of, say, oil has to go up by 3.8%. It could be a 50% increase in the price of oil, but its weight in the basket of goods that comprises, or that you're measuring other countries on, a comparable basket of goods, that is how the price, the overall index move in Guyana versus in another country. So they did a lot of the distortion. We've made it clear that we have seen some price increases in Guyana, and we've been trying to tackle them. And a lot came because of imported inflation, because of what's happened in the COVID period and even now. And other countries have fared worse in addressing these issues. We're trying to tackle them here in Guyana through a series of mechanisms which I pointed out, from using a lower CIF value to calculate the ad valorem taxes, to direct interventions in many sectors that comprise the cost of living. So they can't fault us on that, because we didn't have a dodo government that just accepted everything and did nothing about it. We had an international situation that was affecting all the countries in the world, which is growing food prices and growing inflation, and we intervened, particularly on commodity prices increases. But one thing they will not speak about and they can't address, every week when they do the cost of living series in the Starbrook and they talk about it elsewhere, is the facts that we have put to the nation. One is that we're foregoing over $80 billion of taxes by removing a 50% excise tax on fuel, on just two things, on diesel and gasoline. Nearly $80 billion of foregone taxes that we gave that up because we removed the 50% excise tax. So that's 80 billion Guyana dollars. And what does it translate into at the individual level? For every gallon of gas that you buy or every gallon of diesel, the government basically subsidizes it 500 Guyana dollars. I pointed this out in the past that if you put in 5 gallons of gasoline in your tank, that means you have a subsidy, an implicit subsidy of 2,500 Guyana dollars every time you put 5 gallons of gas in your tank. That is something that we have actually done. What this did is that it kept, although the fuel prices went up globally, it kept the cost of production, especially for industries that use a lot of diesel, it kept it constant, and it also kept transportation costs constant because we didn't see an increase in transportation costs because of higher fuel. You check around the world whether other countries have done that. They've all seen higher costs to the residents who have to travel, who own cars, and also to the industries because of higher fuel prices at the pump. In the United States of America, it's a campaign issue now about higher fuel prices at the pump. In Guyana's case, in spite of the fact that we import all of our fuel, we have kept it constant. No, very few countries in the world have done what we have done. In fact, I can't think of another country that has done this at the scale we did. And who benefits from this? Every single Guyanese. We've also done the same thing, and it bears repeating. It bears repeating. 66 to 70 million US in fuel subsidies for GPL. The price increased from about $70 a barrel to $104 a barrel for their fuel. It cost them 66 to 70 million US dollars more because of fuel price increases. If we didn't give them that money from the government, subsidize it, that meant they would have had to increase because they would have to pay higher prices for fuel, they would have had to increase the electricity bill by 30%. It's now 22 cents per kilowatt hour. Should have gone up by maybe another 8 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And so that's a 30% increase in electricity bill you should have seen because of higher fuel prices. It has not changed because the government is subsidizing that now. So the government, every time you get your electricity bill, it means that there is an explicit subsidy of about 30%. It should have been 30% higher. It's where it is now, like in the past when we had lower fuel prices. Every Guyanese benefits from this. Anyone who uses electricity, not just business, but residents. Which country has done that of this magnitude? Anywhere in our region. The third area, water rates. Water rates should have gone up because of higher electricity costs. We dropped the water rate by 5% since we took office. We have absorbed all of their higher costs. And I'm only speaking about recurrent costs, I'm not speaking about capital, because we're pumping a lot of money into the investments on the capital side, which is like 30 new water treatment plants now that will benefit nearly 250,000 Guyanese on the East Coast, everywhere in the country. We're putting more money to remove more of the iron content, the brown, the thing that you see in your water sometimes, the reddish color that it gets because of high iron content. We're building new plants, several of them, to remove that from our water. I'm not even speaking about capital contribution, or a GPL, the billions we're spending now on new power and new transmission mains. I'm only speaking about things that would affect you now and that would have increased the cost of living had we not intervened. So I've already made it clear that and again, this is a big issue in the US elections. Look at mortgage interest. It's gone up by 4 percentage points in the US. In Guyana's case, it has come down. So it's cheaper now than in 2020 to get a mortgage. Your mortgage rate is lower than in 2020. When the whole world interest rates have gone up. You check what interest rates were around the world, including the US. You call your relative and find out if they have a mortgage. In the US, how it has gone up in the last few years, just the last 2 or 3 years, and you go and check the rates in Guyana, it has come down because of a deliberate government policy too. So these are just some components of cost that go to cost of living. Because if you had to pay higher electricity rates and higher water rates and higher transport rates and higher mortgages and higher rates for bandwidth, for example, internet, because this is all utility. So I've gone through 4 components of cost of living and showed you how they've come down or remain constant because of government policy. Let's go through a 5th one. The cost of internet, which has become, or bandwidth, which has become almost like the same like electricity and water now. It's a utility. So I was checking this morning, and if you had a mobile device, you were getting about 4 gigabits of allocation for $3,000 to $5,000 just when we got into office. So you're getting, that's your total allocation. Once you use that, you had to start paying more. For the same price now, you will get between 35 to 50 gigawatts, the gigabits. You will get that. So this has gone up many times, over 10 times. The same sum of money you're paying, but your allocation now for data use has gone up 10 times more. That has changed. Nobody speaks about that. And why did this happen? Because we liberalized telecommunication as soon as we got into office. Cathy Hughes refused to do that. Although we left the law to do it, they passed the law in 2015 and never did it. You should find out why. And I think there was corruption involved in that. But that is how it is today. So that has reduced your cost. Or even if it hasn't reduced your cost, it has given you more bandwidth and not more allocation. The bandwidth on the fiber side, which is measured in megawatts now, because that's unlimited use, but your bandwidth now, you used to get 10 megawatts for about 9 to 10,000. For the same sum of money now, you can get between 200 to 600 megabits. And this is a major change. This impacts a lot on business people who have fiber now. Some ordinary people have fiber too. But if your cost now or your bandwidth has grown in this phenomenal way, then you can conduct not only more of your business online, but you can do it in new forms of business. APNU would never talk about these things. But in 4 or 5 areas I've already outlined, in spite of global changes in prices, in spite of COVID, because of direct government policies, we have seen lower mortgage rates, we have seen constant electricity prices, we have seen constant prices for fuel and transport prices, we have seen reduced water rates, and we've seen lower bandwidth costs. Every one of those 5 items go into cost of living, not just food prices. So, and we acknowledge that food prices have gone up, and we're trying to tackle this. So, and a lot of other costs have gone up because of success too. You can't prevent that. So, if for example, when we had large rates of unemployment in the APNU period, where people didn't have jobs, 9,000 laid off from the sugar industry, 7,000 actually. They laid off from sugar. We lost 35,000 jobs. People were looking for work all the time. So you could probably get a laborer at that time maybe for $3,000 or maybe $4,000 per day. It's hard to get people in construction now for that price because everybody is employed or have a job or they can walk off from one job and go to another job easily. Now, the price, it's not a good thing that they've increased their prices, but that means Guyanese are earning more too, and they have work now. That's a better position to be in than nobody working. So you can keep prices low because nobody is working. You can keep sand prices low because nobody is building. Or you could have a slightly higher increase because of enhanced economic activities and changes that in the long run will benefit everyone. So we now today have more people working, 60,000 more people Guyanese working and earning a living than under APNU. How come these comparisons are not made? Nobody speaks about this because that's where the success of the PPP government and its deliberate policies to address people's daily needs whilst we try to transform the long-term issues in the country. So I just wanted to draw attention back to these matters because if we don't speak about it every week, you can give a million explanations and they go back, they get a Nazima Raghubir or some other person to come back to the same issues, the Kaitior News or the APNU or the AFC. They would never speak about the major government policies to tackle this. They had none. They had absolutely no policy whatsoever. And therefore, they don't want to point to these successes. So what they will do is they will, at every press conference and every day, try to steer Guyanese away from the stewardship of the PPP, the changes we have made in almost every sector. So their beating horse is corruption. And I have addressed this issue a million times before, and I will continue to address it. Because institutionally, APNU was a disaster on corruption for Guyana. Disaster. They did very few projects, and the few that they did were the overwhelming majority of them were mired in corruption. We have thousands, tens of thousands of projects. They will pick a couple that are not done properly, and then they will try to make that as the prevailing condition. But when you look at the tens of thousands of things happening right across the country, as I said before, it's almost a construction site. You will see thousands of projects that are completed. But they're opposition, so that's understandable. That's their role, to make us look bad. And therefore, they will distort a lot of stuff. It's up to us to respond to them, but not get caught up every day in responding to everything, because that will knock us off the path that we are focused on, which is moving our country forward, bringing our people together. They want to focus on division along racial lines and corruption. We have to focus on bringing our people together and moving our country forward. And so we can't be obsessed about what they talk about all the time, because they'll continue. That is the only thing they can do. But just to point out, I need to point out differences. So they asked Minister Edghill about a project that was built in Prashad Nagar, the 4-lane road coming through Prashad Nagar, which is a project to help the people coming from the East Coast now, because East Coast is a major traffic jam. When you come, people who live on the East Coast having a really tough time coming into the city in the morning, going back home in the evening. It's taking up too much of our time on the road. It used to happen on the East Bank, particularly from Diamond coming in. And soon as we got into office, we set about fixing that. And now it has been alleviated somewhat, and it will change even more once the bypass is completed. So it has several lanes coming in fact 12 lanes coming into the city coming in and going out of the city from about the Eccles area, because you can come in through Ogle, you can come in through Mandela here, the Heroes Highway, and then the old road. We've set about fixing that, because that was a major bottleneck for those who live on the East Bank. And not only those who live on the East Bank, well, if you live over the river or you're coming from Berbice Region 5 or 6, you get caught up in this. We've set about fixing this problem too. APNU didn't had all the time. They didn't even conceptualize fixing it. They didn't even conceptualize fixing it, much less fix it. On the East Coast, the only thing they did was the 4-lane up to Annandale, and you recall who left that project with them. It was a PPP project. We left it with them. They didn't conceptualize it. It just happened to roll over to when they came into office. So we're building 4 lanes coming from Mahaika now. But we have to diffuse the traffic. You can't bring 4 more lanes and take them all by the Russian embassy there. Coming in there is a bottleneck. So we decided we're going to upgrade a number of areas to diffuse the traffic. Through Conversation Tree, going through Ogle, coming back by Aubrey Barker Road. Now they lied about a lot of the contracts on Aubrey Barker Road. It's several people and Edghill can deal with that, the lies there, because he's been dealing with a lot of the lies there. But diffusing the traffic through Ogle, coming in through Aubrey Barker Road, coming through Conversation Tree. We had 2 contracts there. Edghill answered. One completed on time, the contractor completed on time. The other was a Trinidadian contractor who did not do the work properly. We terminated the bid. We recovered all of our money. They gave the contractor who was already on the site, the other contractor, the work to complete it. That becomes a problem. Edghill answered in Parliament. Norton at his press conference talked about corruption there and the project. the Trinidadian contractor will not get any more work because they've already not completed this work. We have made it clear we terminated a contract. This contractor was working one at the airport too. We had difficulties there. We made it clear. That's how we treat them. Look, contrast this with what APNU did. APNU paid $72 million to a Jamaican company to supply scales to Guyana. Scales. As though our people can't do a supply of scales to weigh vehicles. But the scales never came in the country. And we found out that the company that got the scale was owned by the person who was their PR advisor for APNU AFC. And Patterson is charged and before the court for that. And they talk about foreign contractors and corruption. They didn't cancel the $72 million. We didn't receive the scales. They paid out the money. Here the company performed badly, we terminated them, Trinidadian or not. And that's our approach. So, at the same press conference, Adam Harris asked Norton that the IMF said that 50% is lost of our public sector investment program is lost through corruption. And Norton basically agreed with him. It was a setup question. Now, I addressed this some time ago, and I pointed out that this report that they're referring to didn't say 50% is lost through corruption. It was a PIMA. It was done by the IMF in 2017. This was done, and I think even Oil Now had a story on this. This was done in 2017, and it spoke about poor planning in the public sector investment program in 2017. That you lose in Latin America about 30% of your budget because of poor planning. And in Guyana's case, it was maybe 50%. Now, I don't agree with that, even under the APNU period. We didn't lose 50%, even on the APNU. But this report was done in 2017. And now, Adam Harris and Norton resurrects it now and say, oh, the IMF warned that because of these poor project planning that this government had, they didn't leave a lane for the railway on the 4-lane road, the Heroes Highway. That's poor planning. They couldn't even put together the highway, much less talk about leaving a lane for some railway. That we're losing 50% of our budget to corruption. It is the distortion of reports and the lies being told by Norton and Adam Harris. And one would think that we addressed this matter. I spoke of it some time back, that they would have at least had the decency or be a little bit bashful, like have some shame in repeating the same lie again. But these guys would just repeat the same lie in a barefaced way. And we have to come back over and over, point this out. They were talking about your period in government, 2017. And at the same press conference, they spoke about me attacking the magistrate for where the trial of the riggers are taking place. So I don't think anything that I said constituted an attack on the judiciary or the magistracy. I'm very cautious about that. Respecting the separate branches of the government. But I think they were more offended about me speaking about their sordid history of rigging elections and how they were using, the lawyers were all using every bit of delaying tactic to ensure that the clear evidence of rigging that has already been established by an independent commission of inquiry and that is publicly available, that the lawyers are attempting to either frustrate the presentation of this evidence or alternately delay it because they know of the inevitable outcome. And I pointed out that my fear is that the way it's going, that this would have to end up all the way to the CCJ again because of concerns about how some decisions are made in the judiciary. You have the right to make the decisions. We're not questioning that. But don't tell me I can't question that you would rule that 33 is not the majority of 65 and that I must live with it without questioning it. As a citizen of this country or as the General Secretary of the largest political party in the country. Because had we allowed that to prevail, had we not joined the CCJ, the APNU would have been in government today based on that ruling. Now, look at the United States of America. Every day, you just turn on the television and go to Fox News or CNN or any one of the news entities, and you will see a slew of congressmen coming through or officials, even the President of the United States of America, criticizing and questioning the ruling of the Supreme Court in the United States of America. But that is not an attack on the judiciary. That's an open society, transparency. But in Guyana's case, if you even respectfully question some of the rulings, which we believe can't be substantiated by the case as presented, the facts as presented, it's an attack on the judiciary. But it's very convenient for APNU and the AFC to say this. They had an attorney general in the last government that practically threatened a judge. If you Google that in the newspapers, Google that and you will see threaten a judge in the court. We have had the PNC run the judiciary. There was a period when the PNC, the party paramountcy, was more important than the independence of the judiciary. That's the history that they come from. So forgive me if we're a bit concerned about the decisions made. And that is precisely why we didn't we don't push to have the executive choose judges who are sympathetic to the PPP. That's done by an independent body, as APNU did. We just said, let's have an external review, and that's the CCJ. So our democratic credentials here are very established. Our position as a political party and as a government in terms of respect for the independence of the judiciary is unmatched in Guyana. And the same people who sought to undermine the independence of the judiciary now conveniently complains, oh, Jagdeo is criticizing a magistrate. I'm concerned about the delay. And look again now, we have another delay. Another delay that would last up to September, until September, and I don't even know if they will resume in September. Now, as ordinary citizens of this country, what should you be thinking? They don't want you to even consider that this matter has been long delayed. Look how all the other matters are moving forward rapidly. Almost people have been charged a couple of weeks ago. They take 3-4 months, they get convicted. These individuals have been charged several years now, almost 4 years, and we can't even get to the trial. The same thing with Rickford Burke and the extortion charges. We can't even get to the trial for that, where he extorted businessmen here. And I see, by the way, another statement today from the Public Works Ministry that some social media outfit now called Credible Sources has been posting a number of things about corruption, but they're contacting businessmen or the contractors to say the same scam that Rickford Burke and the others have been running, where he tried to extort the businessman by making advert posts about the company and then called him on the side and say, or got the people who said, who to call him, got his people to call the businessman to say, we can remove your name from our post if you pay us some money or give us some money, the extortion. So the people behind the Credible Sources are doing the same. And I want to reiterate what the Ministry of Public Works said today in their press release, that the contractors who are being shaken down by these Credible Sources, they must go to the police. They should go to the police so we can find out who the people are, because that's a new form of extortion. And it's happening with some of these opposition politicians too. They go for political contributions to some of the businessmen. And they say, if you don't do that, if you win a contract, we'll say something bad about your contract. It used to happen with one member of parliament who was going after a number of people who got the pump stations, to build those pump stations. And he was asking them for money. And once we exposed it, he stopped doing it. So it started up again with these Credible Sources. So if anyone has a history of undermining the independence of the judiciary, it has to be the PNC. The PNC. And those were some of the issues that Norton raised at his press conference. So lies about corruption, he brought up the Calco thing, and he didn't even stop to consider how they dealt with this foreign Jamaican company and how we dealt with this Trinidadian company. We terminated. We recovered our resources and we made it clear, you're not getting work again here. And then he repeats a lie from 2017 using the IMF, an IMF study that was for their period in office, and said, oh, the government, 50% of our projects are lost to corruption. The IMF says this, making it look like it's today they're talking about it. But they were talking about 2050. And then, of course, the magistrate thing. So, the same thing in the AFC press conference, the same issues with projects, etc. But one thing that came out of the press conference from the AFC, It's a lot of nonsense. They talk all about, oh, the judiciary, Nigel Hughes, and all of that. And he didn't mention about the Starbuck News article about jury tampering. If, please read about the story where the foreman of the jury for one of the guys who killed a number of Guyanese, including children, etc., who was on trial, who subsequently got freed by a jury, that he did not disclose that the foreman of the jury was one of his clients, although you're required to do that by law. Read that story, go back, Google it, and you will find out the Nigel Hughes that we know of, the same Nigel Hughes who removed the videotape from the Hamilton gas station, the same Nigel Hughes who threatened violence in Agricola, well, not in Agricola, but threatened violence, and by midnight it happened in Agricola. We know of a different person. And he's not new. Chairman of the AFC twice since he's been with them originally, so he brings nothing new to the table. And you notice he's gone quiet on my point about where is your study. Now, could you let them bring the National Development Strategy, the volumes that I left here on the table? Let them get it for me. They took it, I think they took it downstairs. So I said, tell us what your policies are in every sector. We can tell you what. And then maybe we can talk about a national get together and we all talk policy. You have nothing now. Zero in no area. You're making a policy on the run. 1 week it's to fight crime, you need to put back the 2 a.m. curfew. You have no strategy. No strategy. Norton says he's going to help you if you win, pay your rent. Forget housing. Don't own anything. We'll help you pay your rent if we win in 2020. No policy. So you notice, stop talking about that. Every week he was talking about, let's get together and do a policy. Stop talking about that. Every time he's cornered on their corruption or their, just rest it here. And by the way, these are just some of the NDS that we did in 1996. This is what I handed over to Dr. Jagan. Yeah, I think it was 1996. As the National Development Strategy. This was before they stole our colors. These were the exact colors, the yellow and green. So you may think it's APNU AFC document. Maybe they saw this and they think it's there. This is the color, original color it was in at that time. And I think he wants to adopt this. Huh? Yes, he may want to. I don't have a problem they adopt the content, but they must have the decency to say so. They must have they have nothing, absolutely nothing. This was developed, and then we took this, and we were trying to get them on board. I'm digressing a bit, but we're trying to get them on board because we said, let's all work for this national strategy. Desmond Hoy, Chedi Jagan, myself, we all went to Atlanta. We were talking at the Carter Center. At that time, yeah, I was in finance. We made presentations. We said, how can we work together in the 90s to bring all the parties together? They said this was a PPP strategy. So we said, all right, we'd allow the NGOs to take this huge set of documents and rework them and give input. I asked Kenneth King, who at one stage was the General Secretary of the PNC. and was a minister under the PNC government, I asked him to lead the effort for me with the NGO's involvement, hoping that his leadership will allow them to buy into the national strategy at that time. Kenneth King did a great work with a number of other people. We stayed in the background, we supported it because we'd already done this, and we handed it over to them. Still did not buy into it. The APNU at that time, the PNC at that time, didn't buy into it. They were opposed to it. And now he wants us to get together to do the same thing that we did already. But he has nothing. They have no policy content. So I would like to see what their housing strategy would look like and how it would be different from ours. Well, we heard one element of it. They would help people to pay their rent. That's what they said. But you know, you can't believe anything that they say. They'd help you pay rent. And the thing is that, and even that, they've now changed a bit of it. I heard one of them saying, oh, we can't really do that for everybody. We'll just do it for selective groups of people. And you know who that would be. So this is, let me come back to the major issue. Nothing on policy. No, notice they don't talk about that. So the whole press conference of the AFC was on the judiciary, who interfering, who not interfering, all of that. Nothing that brings benefits to people or outline their plans. Notice they're not responding to anything about that the leader of the opposition and Sherrod Duncan their names are in the public domain now as having not submitted the statements to the Integrity Commission. Now Nigel Hughes and Cathy Hughes and the others would not tell you that the 3 years in government they didn't submit any report to the Integrity Commission. They just shut it down, the Integrity Commission. They don't talk about that. Even now they're not submitting. And Norton is the man who keeps asking me whether all my assets are reflected in my submissions. And the answer is yes, and I've been submitting them to the Integrity Commission. So he is a defaulter. They don't, the press conference didn't talk about that. It doesn't talk about, at the press conference, you have Patterson, who is charged for corruption and was getting his ministry to buy expensive gifts for him against their policy, gold jewelry and all of that. Doesn't talk anything about that. They don't even, they switch. They switch. So what he does, he introduces somebody to create a policy now for indigenous people. So we're told that a Laura George from the APA at the last press conference has now left the APA to be part of the AFC, and they were working on a policy for indigenous people. Now they're working on a policy for indigenous people. This party, AFC, has been around for 15 years. They don't have a policy as yet for indigenous people. Like Norton said on a television program, I didn't pay enough attention to the oil and gas sector in the last 9 years. He didn't pay enough attention. They don't have a policy as yet. They got a Laura George. But that tells us people think we've been unfair to the APA. But it tells you something about the APA. When we say the APA and TIGI and the others, like human rights body, they are hostile to the PPP. One of the leaders of the APA resigned to be the deputy leader of the APNU AFC list in 2015. Another leader of the APA has just resigned to join the AFC. This is the same leader, Laura George, who in 2022 said that the Amerindian land titling project was started by Granger. Now, we had an Amerindian land titling project from the early period when we went into office all the way to 2015. And as a result of that, we moved the title lands from about 6% of Guyana to over 14% of Guyana. Title lands that people receive titles for. In that Amerindian land titling unit that we left, we had $10 million allocated to it to continue the land titling program earned through the sale of forest carbon from Norway. APNU came into office. They shut down the Amerindian land titling unit. A minister of the government said Amerindians are greedy. If they want too much land, if they get more land, they must not get oil and gas money. He said this in Parliament. Granger then tried to dilute the Amerindian land claim by linking it through a commission on the with African ancestral lands. We said they're separate issues. The AFC was complicit, not AFC, the APA was complicit in this, undermining Amerindian land claims by agreeing to this. They then went to State House. Granger did not meet with the NTC to discuss this. He was meeting with APA. The NTC is the elected body for all the communities. There's the leadership for all the elected leaders in Guyana. APA had the pride of place. They didn't say anything throughout that whole period when very little Amerindians' land were titled. APA didn't say anything when nearly 2,000 CSOs were fired. Nothing whatsoever in the APNU period, because the former head of the APA was the deputy leader of the APNU list. Nothing came out of it. Amerindians, the community saw very little development in that period. So we got into office now, and the first big initiative we reworked the green strategy, and $22.5 million US, or 4-point-something billion now, we said will go from money that we earned, that was not there under APNU. We earn not taxpayers' money from just the sale of forest carbon, will go to these 242 villages. Guess who tried to block it again? The APA. Now, they say they support Amerindians, but they tried to block $4.7 million Guyana dollars going to 242 villages that have funded over 800 projects in these communities. They tried to block it. First, through the Arts Secretariat. When they failed there, they went to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. They tried to block that because they know if development takes place in the Amerindian communities, then their party, their political party, APA's political party, which is APNU AFC, their party would not be, Amerindians may not vote for their party. So they tried to block the development for Amerindian communities. They've been spreading that on the ground, anti-PPP propaganda for years, the APA. They're not concerned about development. They got $20 million for their own development, for APA, not a cent went to the Amerindian communities. And I hope that the international community that has been giving them some money for the development of indigenous villages, that they see now with this latest act, that this is a political organization, APA. So their true colors just came through here. It's just been revealed. But Laura George told, she said this to Stabrook News, and then they had a controversy, and then she claimed that it was taken out of context, that Granger started the Amerindian Land Titling Unit, that he dismantled actually. He dismantled the unit. And so when they're going, what policies are they going to develop for Amerindian communities now? I would like to see that policy. Would the policy say Amerindians are still greedy? That they want too much land? Would they move away from that position? Nigel Hughes or the AFC and PNC, that they want too much land? Are they going to commit to continuing what we have done, which is to not rehire those Amerindians, but the numbers have gone up to nearly 3,000 CSOs now, and a few other thousands that we've hired through the part-time work in this area? Would they commit to continuing the LCDS funds? Because the way it seems that they would not get any money from the LCDS because APA believes this is a bad program for Amerindians. But they may be very convenient. You know, when we had the Norwegian agreement, APA, AFC tried to block the $250 million in the early, maybe 2010, 2011 period. They tried to block it. They wrote a letter to Norway. And as soon as they got into office, they start utilizing the money. Of course, Norway didn't pay too much attention to them. We got the money, but the PPP lost the elections in 2015, so the resources could not have been used. APNU had use of it. They used the same money that they tried to block, and the APA tried to block. So I suspect it's a bunch of dishonest, unethical people who will sacrifice all that they claim they stand for, which is Amerindian development, for their political motives. The APA is doing that on a daily basis. It's political, and two, I believe it's corrupt, because they utilize all of the money on trips, on high wages and salaries for a few of their executive people. And pittances are used in these communities to hold seminars and to organize groups to fight the government. That's all they do. And so we intend to tackle this seriously, because they go to the international community and claim, oh, we're an impartial NGO. They've been a recruitment pool for the APNU AFC. Recruitment pool. You look at through their entire history, and they've just demonstrated that. But I would like to see what policy they will come up with for Amerindian people. In our case, in the leadership of our party, we have a camp going on today, and I'm going into Latem tomorrow, a camp of nearly 500 young people, Amerindian persons from Region 9, a youth camp. Another youth camp is with nearly 1,000 people, soon will be in Region 1. We've won the overwhelming support in these communities. We have the leadership of these regions are members in the central committee of our party, the highest level of the party. Many of them are young people, and they run the region. That's the respect. The PNC had one Amerindian general secretary. They ran her out of office, basically. She resigned recently. Eglon Gomes recently showed the top leadership of the PNC. Just one race. And the same thing with the AFC. I think even the Eureka Finance or whatever her name is, or tried to contest, and they knock her off too. Knock her out of the leadership. Nothing. There's just tokenism. You talk about tokenism. In our case, it's integrated. We are a multi-ethnic party. We look out for the interests of all of our people, and our people in this country are made up of different religions and different races. That's our people. That's what we look out for. We look out for everyone, and you can see it in our programs. Could happen in Linden. It doesn't matter even if they vote APNU. We're there to work in to change people's lives there. That APNU didn't do. You ask the 1,400 persons that will get a plot of land in Linden what they got on the APNU. And you ask the 1,200 part-time workers who got a job now whether they had a job on the APNU. You ask them in that region. And they will tell you no. And they voted overwhelmingly for APNU. So it's very, very different. They just pluck her out to come up with their Amerindian policy. But I'm looking forward, waiting now to see what they would. And would the APA start respecting free prior informed consent? Because when the villages say we want this program, and they're in a minutes that they have a village meeting and they send the minutes to the ministry to say we want these projects, APA then goes internationally to try to block them, the projects. And they claim free prior informed consent, which is a cardinal principle for dealing with indigenous people now. So we need to point this out. We need to show that they have nothing, and they have really not changed. So what I found quite interesting though in all of this, and when I read this stuff, this policy weakness is a tragedy for the country. Their policy weakness is a tragedy for the country. And for someone who's been around and been in policy at the highest level, from the cabinet in 1993, before many people were born, and at a policy-making level, and understanding the complexity that goes into policy-making and the need to be consistent. It is a tragedy for me because I wish that they were stronger on policy so we could have robust policy debates. But when a party has no policy, they're often led by the nose. So they try to become populist on every issue, to say what people want to hear, whether it makes sense or not, whether it's sustainable or not. They just say what people want to hear. So if they hear that, they go on the road and say, you know, people are driving too late in the night and they may be high, then let's start with a 2 a.m. curfew. Never mind that might not be the root cause of the problem, and that it's much more complex to deal with accidents on the road because people drink before 2 a.m. and they also, some people just drive crazy in the day and they cause accidents in the day. That's not the root cause. So they become very populist. They say the things that everyone wants to hear. And let me give you an illustration of this. And then they also are led by the nose by populist lunatics like Glenn Lal and his newspaper. So they want to please and they don't want an adverse write-up in the Kaichor News. I don't practically care what the Kaichor says about me. Every day they talk. I've grown accustomed to it. On a weekly basis, my name is mentioned maybe 50 times in a bad light in Kaichor. And basically, I view it as dumb because it's over and over and over again. And it's led by a man who then, I don't think he could even understand what's written in policy, much less talk about it. You listen to him, somebody told me, he said in his radio program 2 nights ago that if Jagdeo made the right decisions, we'd all be sitting on our veranda smoking, drinking champagne, and we wouldn't have to work back in this country. Is this not, a full-fledged lunatic you're dealing with? Because any country in the world that believes that you can't work because you got some money from Exxon that Nigel Hughes wants to give $35,000 a year to every Guyanese, 35,000 Guyana dollars, and think that 35,000 Guyana dollars a year will make you have to stop working. But in the US, they work 4 jobs. And the fact is their per capita GDP is like 80,000 US dollars. We're not even half of that. And they work 2-3 jobs, and he thinks that you could do that. If only we make the right decisions, people would stop working and drink champagne. Lunacy. And these people, every day on the air, over and over and over, saying the same thing. And then you have the political parties weigh in now. So they're sycophants. They want to suck up now to Glenn Lyle. So guess what happened now? In the last week, they're under pressure now because Kaichor News can bully them. They can't bully me. I would say what I think, and I don't care how you reflect it in your newspaper, because in any case, you would lie about what I say. So last week I explained, once again for the 100th time, that there's no interest charge on the cost bank. So the agreement that AFC APNU signed in 2016 allows the oil and gas companies to deduct without the approval of the minister and charge to the cost bank interest and other financing costs. So APNU and AFC did that. They gave the company the right to deduct and charge to the cost bank this. So AFC then puts out a headline. Last week, let me go through this. Last week, I explained to the Kaichor News, as I said before, once again, that right now, as of now, there is no interest, 0 interest that is charged to the cost bank. 0 interest that's charged to the cost bank. I pointed out that the explanation, and this has to be, it was just checked by the auditors. So I pointed out that they are funding this, the explanation given is they're funding this from equity and money earned that they don't repatriate to their parent company. I pointed out that they lease a lot of the FPSOs, and so the people who are leasing the FPSOs may charge or borrow, and therefore they have an interest cost, but that is subsumed in the lease cost. So Exxon would lease the vessel, but the interest cost by the people who are leasing the vessels might be subsumed in the cost of the lease. So this is the position at this time. So 0 interest at this point in time charged to the cost bank. I pointed out that under the international reporting the standards, that it would be reflected differently in their filings. But what is of concern to us now, which is what is provided for by the agreement, is whether the interest is charged to the cost bank. And the answer is no. I gave a full explanation. Kaichor News said Jagdeo didn't answer the question. Again, this is the 100th time I've gone through this. I didn't answer the question. I answered it last week. So guess what the 2 others said? AFC, government hiding oil companies' interest rate, a major blow to citizens. This is AFC. The same people who are hiding Nigel Hughes' contract. He should tell us how much he's earning from the oil companies. He should tell us how much he's earning from the oil companies that he refuses to disclose. And secondly, he has said clearly that if the Exxon interest conflicts with that of Guyana, he will choose Exxon side, the Exxon side. He said this in minutes after he became the leader of AFC in an interview in the Demerara Waves. If anybody says something, politician, that obscene anywhere in the world, it would be the end of their career. Anywhere in the world. Any politician who says, I'll put the interests of a foreign company ahead of Guyana, my own country, but I want to be president of this country. It would be the end of your career. They're propping him up, hiding all of that. Big debate about whether this is a conflict of interest or not. Pure nonsense. So they're hoping by making these statements and linking up with Kiteshore News that they will prevent a careful scrutiny of this obscene position. They can hide from it. So that's how every week they will put out a new headline on the oil and gas companies. Oh, Cathy Hughes is concerned in Parliament now. We want to explore Exxon's role, etc. in, I wonder at night whether they said Exxon doesn't want to appear before the Natural Resources Committee. So would Nigel Hughes be defending Exxon if they're charged? Of course, that's nonsense too, because private companies a long time ago, the Parliament took a decision to keep the politicians away from the private companies, because people like the AFC and the AFC would shake them down if they come to Parliament, like credible sources coming there. They would shake them down. We know that that is so. But you will get a lot of this from the AFC. All the great positions today, they're not answering, they're not talking about the elephant in the room. The elephant is sucking up all the space, but the Kiteshore News and everybody and all of the editorials in Stabroek, they can't see the elephant in the room. They're looking for the little mice in the rats in the room, the little things, you know. Actually, rat might be a little too big too. They're looking for the smaller things in the room, maybe an ant in the room, and they see the ant, but they can't see the elephant. That is the elephant in the room. This guy has already publicly stated, I will undermine Guyana's interests if my client's interests were to conflict with that of Guyana. So they signed this contract. They gave Exxon the right in an agreement that was drafted. The cabinet paper was drafted by Exxon and given to them, and then they took it to the cabinet. They gave Exxon the right to deduct interest and financing costs without approval from the minister. And today, questioning, after I said, at this point in time, no interest is charged to the cost bank, still saying, oh, this is a blow to the citizens of Guyana. This is the kind of duplicity we have coming from the AFC. It is the fig leaf, the proverbial fig leaf for their nakedness. So they use this as the fig leaf. This, and you will see this all the time about statements on the oil and gas industry. So all of them been saying this, and then APNU was a little bit tamer. They said government needs to clarify the situation with Exxon interest payments under the 2016 PSA. So I clarified it. Last week I did. I clarified it before. But it's the sucking up, the unholy alliance between the lunatic. They're being led by a lunatic. It's the same way that the AFC, the APNU, Rickford Burke, another lunatic, he posted that the dump site, the vehicle dump site, was rented from Hickens by the government, and then we found out that APNU was dumping the thing there. It's a government-owned dump site, and it was there, but APNU put out 2 statements with video images and aerial footage, etc. You know what it represents? As I come back to the tragedy. If you could be led by the nose as a political party on policies, then the future of the country, should you get your hand on power, it's a sad future. And that's what we found in 2015, that they don't have any policy. They're all over the place, and they couldn't even fulfill their commitments that they made to people because they had no intentions of fulfilling it. And they want to take the easy path. So the easy path is, let's have a strategy. Let's have constitutional reform. When you have these things, somebody needs to make the tough decision. We make the tough decision every single day. Every single day we do it, and it's necessary. That's the only way you move a country forward. We took a decision to build a gas-to-energy project. We made the decision, we're doing it. We know the outcome would be stable electricity, 50% reduction in the rate, and we'd export gas, cooking gas prices will come down. We are persevering with it, in spite of all of the criticism, because that's what the people of this country want. They would have did it all the time they did it. And then, oh, let's give it to a commission, let's do a study. Nothing happens. Like they killed the hydro, they didn't do that, and they expect you to get stable power. No investment in generating or transmission capacity, and expect you to get stable power. That is what happens. Constitutional reform. We have the most progressive constitution. If you look at all of the things we put in place, the ERC to tackle questions when people feel discriminated because of their race. It has investigative powers. It has powers of sanction. We put that in place. They don't use it, but they want constitutional reform again. Nigel Hughes wants the law of this country to say 10% of the proceeds must go to people, which works out to 35,000 Ghana dollars per year. And, you know, that is from oil money. This is when you don't have a policy. So now the new one is the Petroleum Commission. Let's have a Petroleum Commission. This would solve every problem. Who will make the tough calls? You think you can put a technical person there who will make a tough call? They would put a Vincent Adam there and he would do nothing. He was there. So it's just another, is this poverty in policy making that leads to this? Let's have another technical body established so we don't have to do anything. This would solve every problem. It would solve audit, laws, Exxon would be compliant with everything, etc. It wasn't, at the end of the day, every decision made or the decisions made were political. When the PSA was signed, it was signed by Trotman, and he went to cabinet for. The crucial decisions can't be kicked down the road or passed to someone else. That's what they're doing because they have no policy. So when you do that, every week I expect them, Kaichor would bully them and they would say something because they don't have a policy. They don't want to defend it. They want to be populist. And so they then will respond with this nonsense that they did here. So again, Norton wants to stop producing sugar. His response, oh, we have some increasing costs. Stop producing sugar. At least he's honest about it. Norton says, stop it. The APNU AFC went to the 2015 campaign, stood up on the platform and said the PPP was spreading rumors about closure of estates. People, never happened. We'll expand production. they, they practically shut it down. The thing is, Norton said, I will stop the production of sugar. So he needs to consider that sugar is still the biggest generator of jobs and income in the whole of Berbice. I explained that last week. If you remove the disposable income from people, it affects the whole of the region. The people who work in sugar and those who don't work, because sugar workers' income is also the source of, or the source of the disposable income is the source from other people, for other people who are selling other types of services. So we made it clear. Let's give them a chance. I drink my coffee. So yes, so this is what. He will destroy Berbice again. Berbice used to be a dead zone. So now it is alive once again because of our efforts and our people. So, but he fails to look at what is happening in sugar too. A lot of the drainage and irrigation works in these estates, when they were not done, it would lead to flooding because the villages are integrated with the drainage and irrigation system of the Gaisuko sugar estates. So it's when you look at the net, even though you give a subsidy, when you look at the net changes or the net spending, if you did not subsidize or there was no functioning sugar estate, you would have to spend maybe 30% more on D&I, so in those areas. So it's a complex system there that operates, but I don't expect Norton and the others to understand that. They complain about the subsidy given to the workers who are working. They work in the field every morning. They go out, they cut the cane, they bring it in, hard work. They do that. We lost some markets a long time ago because of the change in the European Union, but these are people who work for a living. He doesn't complain. We look at how we treated Region 10. We're now, so he complains about the 5 billion of subsidy we give to the sugar industry, but we give over 5 billion of subsidy for electricity alone, for lower electricity prices in Region 10. So people don't pay what we pay here in Region 4 or any other region in the country. We pay a higher rate here in Region 4, maybe about 8-10 times more than they pay, because we subsidize power to Linden. So when you go to Linden their electricity bill might be 1/10 of our bill, because every year we buy power and then pay the full price of it at 30 cents per kilowatt hour from both sides, even higher than we are generating now, and we sell it back for a fraction of the cost. They wouldn't say anything about that, and he wants to complain about, oh, we're giving 5 billion subsidy, but for people who are actually working and cleaning the canals and cutting the cane and taking it to the fields, etc. That is the duplicity. They don't look at it. But what I read politically, I see an attempt. So Norton has been saying he needs to mend fence within his party politically now, since as General Secretary of the PPP. So he wants to mend fence with the people who claim he rigged the elections. They claim he rigged the elections, that he's unaccountable because he's been using their money, blank checks, all of that. He shut them out, created fictitious groups to vote at the election, didn't bring some of the delegates there from other regions. that were opposed to him. So now he's saying to them, let's mend all the fences. Never mind, I rigged the elections. Never mind, I'm unaccountable. So let us mend fences, because the big enemy is the PPP. So knowing them, we expect all of them to come back together. That's the ones, the forwards and the others, to link up back with Norton. But people have already seen who they are, and they've seen the inner workings of that party. If you can't have a coherent strategy or support, coherence at your party level, how can you run a government? You can't do that. And it would be an alliance of convenience when they come back together. And we expect them to roll back in, because some of the people who were left out remember the perks that they got. And the perks were huge. I spoke about some of that already. It was only the connected people who got land on the avenue. I can give you the list and you'll be shocked to see. You should get the list yourself. The large tracts of land went to maybe about 300 of the politically connected people, and nothing went to ordinary people. They were not interested in developing small outlots for people. They were interested in giving to the key people. I can remember the medical benefits that they put in, which we removed, external insurance for themselves and their families. So in case anything was wrong with a minister or a member of the cabinet and his family, his or her family, they would have been flown abroad for treatment. We paid for that. The government was supposed to pay half of it, and they were supposed to pay half. The government ended up paying for all of it. So in the period they were in office, they didn't have to rely on local health care, whether it's in Guyana, private or public. They were flown abroad for this, and we paid for that. We removed that too from office when we got back into office. There were lots of other perks. You remember the increase in the per diem. They increased per diem massively, and what they did, they made it a final charge on the consolidated fund. So once you collect the money, whether you travel or not, you pocketed it, because it was a final charge. You didn't have to account for it. I can go down a long list that we forget about. Now, you know the video mega, the minister approving contracts for our own company in our own ministry, just signing off. This is a company that's owned by the minister, and she signs off for a contract on our own company. That happened with Cathy Hughes and the other. Lots and lots of perks. So that is why they will get together. If you look at Rosedale Ford and his tenure at the Gaming Commission, you should find out how many licenses were given out to a lot of companies that today are dominating the gambling scene in Guyana. A lot of licenses were given out in that period too, and not in hotels, because we had passed a law to say that you had to build a hotel of a certain specification to get a casino license. A lot of things happened in that period. You remember the attempt to shake down Clifton Bacchus from Sleep Inn. A group went to him and asked for $3 million US to get the casino license. All of that took place. So I have no doubt whatsoever that they would remember that sort of thing and get back together internally. So it wouldn't be anything new, the fence mending, the so-called fence mending. And then I saw Nigel Yu saying, oh, there is no competition with Norton. So I read someone sent me a post by a person who was close to the last government. And I think it was a clever post, and also it was insightful about what is at play now and between the greens and the yellows. And concluded that the objective of the yellow is not necessarily to win the 2015 election, because they know that that's far from, they can't win the 2015. They want to replace the green as the main opposition. And so the battle is between, so when Nigel Yu says no competition with Norton, he should tell the AFC members who are going around saying that Norton is useless, he is not intellectually capable, he is corrupt, that all sorts of things, and that the only hope is to switch to the AFC. He should say that to his people. It's not what he says on the platform that matters, it's the whisper campaign they have with Norton, and Norton is smart enough to know this, that their plan is to do that. So the person is saying really, and some others have been saying, it's not to win the 2025 elections, it is to replace the PNC. And that's their target. And so we're looking at it carefully. We will continue to look at these matters politically. But right now we're focused on just improving the lives of people. When we do so in a realistic way, in a way that sometimes people, it's not populist, sometimes people don't agree with you, because it points to the truth that once we work hard, all of our people will prosper. But we have to keep working hard. There's no not working and sitting down, we are already rich. There's none of that. And we don't have money to give everyone, because the income level of the country is now growing, and it is necessary to stay this course for a while. So thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Vice President. Kimal King from Oil Now. Earlier today, Frontiera Energy, which is CGX's partner in the quarantine block, held their second quarter earnings call to talk about their quarterly performance. And
I didn't see it. Okay.
One of the things that they were asked about by analysts who tuned in was about the Guyana situation. And of course, they noted your comments regarding the government's hesitancy and the things that it's not satisfied about yet before it decides whether it will approve the notice of potential commercial interest. And one of the questions that one of the analysts posed to them, it was a woman named Christine Guerrero from Octane Investments, and she asked them if it is that if the government does not approve the notice, whether Frontiera has any legal recourse to recover the costs that they have invested into Guyana. Because according to her, it appears as though, based on the comments that you've made, that the government of Guyana appears to be acting in bad faith. So of course, Frontiera did not directly address that question, and they wouldn't. But I wanted to ask you, given that, certain utterances like this from officials like you could have certain impacts, for example, on, let's say, the company's share prices and the evolution of that. What do you think about the assessment that your comments may be in bad faith? Because her point was that, you know, since Frontier and CGX got the license for the quarantine block, nothing really has changed with respect to those companies. So that's the point that she was making. What is it?
I don't get that last point, because I'm reluctant to comment on something that I've not seen as yet. So, but let me make it clear. I don't answer to the shareholders of these companies. I answer to the people of Guyana. When I come to a press conference here, this is a local press, you ask questions and you deserve an answer. And I will tell you what the government is doing and what its considerations are. So a lot of these companies, when they're confronted with the shareholders, they tend to paint a rosy picture of the country, or not the country, but of their circumstances, and that's understandable. And it may not be the accurate picture be seen from a regulatory perspective. So that's all I have to say, that I'm now working for these companies. They have to, we have to, of course, be factual, and everything I've said to you is factual, and therefore I think it's in good faith. The mere fact that we had the meetings to consider to give them an opportunity to present additional information on issues that were of concern to the government of Guyana showed that we operated in good faith throughout. And they were unable to do that. And therefore, the cabinet will deal with it when, and even now at this stage, the cabinet has to continue considering the matter. Has not concluded its work.
Okay, no problem. However, a similar...
But none of the Exxon cannot tell me, or CGX, how I must conduct my press conferences or what answers I must give to the people of Guyana. The people of Guyana are our shareholders. They operate. Now, I can understand if we're acting in total bad faith or we're misleading the public. If we're misleading the public here or the international community, that's a different matter. But everything so far that we spoke about on CGX is factual. They submitted their application, and right now they have now answered all the questions.
Okay, well, let me just clarify, in all fairness to CGX and Frontier, that the person who made the comment was not of the companies. So no, I'm just putting that
well, that's
on the
why
record.
That's why I said I did not want to respond, because you said that it just came out.
Right.
However, my comments still stand. Mm-hmm. And it's a generic comment. It's a generic. It's not directly related to Frontier or CGX. I was just responding how I deal with our shareholders, which are the people of this country. And when I come to a press conference, I'm expected, if the shareholders of this country, through the media, ask certain questions, that we have to give them answers. And we try to give them answers where we are in different matters. So, and that's all that I've done.
No problem, but don't you think last year, for example, Repsol had asked the government for a brand new license, and you gave your considerations for what you were thinking of at the time, and that the government would make a decision on Repsol's application. And the government did not eventually give a final decision. So if the government gives its considerations on certain applications, and it is taking, okay, maybe a few weeks or a few months to give a decision.
No, but in Repsol's case, as with CGX, I'm told, Repsol came to the end of the period. They no longer have a license. So
yeah, it's different.
That's very not. It's not that it's different, but that's clarity on the matter. Right now, Repsol does not have a license. So what else do you want us to clarify on that?
The point that I'm trying to make
if we had decided, or had we decided at that time that we are going to give them a new license, you would have been told about it. The public would have been told, but their license came to an end, and that's where it stood.
Right. It would seem as though the government not giving an official refusal in the public, it may seem as though the lack of a decision could be seen as a decision itself, you know?
Yes, well, it is not a lack of a decision. The decision was they asked for a new license, basically, and the answer was no, you couldn't get it. You couldn't get it because they don't have a license. So, and there is no process through which they're going to get an extension of that license. They may come back in and bid now for the very area, but they're not going to have that license back.
So the answer for Repsol...
The answer, and that's why I said that they had no way of recovering the money spent on exploration at that time.
Okay, so for the answer for Repsol was no, because you hadn't officially ever said that.
The answer.
Okay.
But
all right.
that was
no, you hadn't said that up until now.
Yes, but I thought, yes. Anyhow, you didn't ask me until now.
Okay. On behalf of Reuters, could you please elaborate your position once again on the CGX application right now?
No, I've done it. I've already told you what happened, the process that they came in on Thursday, on Wednesday next. The minister can go through the details of it. He can go through what they applied for, when they apply, the meeting that he had with them, and everything else, the paper that was submitted to cabinet, and the considerations of the cabinet. But I told you all about this because you asked before, and I made it clear that is where the process to which the process that we're engaged in at this point in time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. And Williams Culture News. You mentioned the sugar industry. In 2020, the president would have met with a team from Dubai, since there was a company that was looking to invest into the sugar industry. Can you say what happened to this venture?
Who? Your prime minister?
Team from the
I thought
government.
that was Nagamoto bringing. You remember? You remember Nagamoto was bringing in investors. I don't. The president has met with a lot of people who might be interested in sugar, and we still have. That's an option that is still being actively explored now about getting private equity into the sugar industry. So that's still under active consideration. But if it didn't happen by now, since you asked now, it meant that the terms of the engagement may not have been favorable to Guyana, and that is why a decision was not made. But since you're asking now, I can't give you a specific answer to that question because I don't remember you were talking about 2020. Somebody approached us in 2020. But if it didn't move forward, it is for there would have been the major factor. We always look out for what is good for our country.
Secondly, sir, just an update. 2 weeks ago, you said that you would have gotten the quarter report from the oil companies in relation to the reserves. Can you update us on that?
Well, there's been, you will get the exact figure next week from the minister. But as I said before, there's been no major change. You quoted some agency from abroad that has given a high figure. There's been no major change in the report that we received. So the minister on Wednesday will give you the exact number of barrels of the reserve.
Good afternoon, sir. Selena Natu with Kaitra News. What improvements can Guyanese expect from the 7th oil project should it be approved?
When and if we approve the project, then you will be told about what the benefits would be. We have not looked at anything. There is currently no application in for the 7th project as yet. So when the application comes in, that is when we'd start considering this matter. Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, Doctor. Just one
Yes.
quick question from me. The coalition government had made the field development plans for the Liza 1 and Liza 2 public. Will the government be following suit with the other 4 that was approved?
Are you sure about this? When did they
Well,
make it public?
I have seen the documents. And
When
I was
did you
told
see it?
that- I saw it 2 days ago.
2 days ago, and you
Yeah.
think they made it public?
Well, I'm assuming it's them.
You assume it's them.
Because
That's
they
why
approved,
you
Liza
recall,
1 and Liza 2.
You're doing the same sort of assumption that the TIGI did, although it's more than an assumption. You know what TIGI did in 2019? Let me repeat it again. 2019, they sent a report to Transparency International to say that the APNU government stopped the parking meter project. It was civil society fighting to stop that project. APNU approved the parking meter project. 2, they said that APNU had published the agreement, the 2016 agreement, and it was a lie again. That they had not published it. It was the fight between the opposition, the newspapers, and civil society that led to the publication. And thirdly, what was the third issue? Oh, they said APNU had strengthened the Integrity Commission. Now, having known in 2019 that the first 3 years of the APNU-AFC coalition in government, that no returns were submitted to the Integrity Commission. 3 huge lies that left a body that claims that it is dealing with transparency in Guyana, submitted a report to Transparency International. They reflected an improvement in Guyana, or our standing went up a bit based on these lies. They thought the report, nobody will see the report. Then Transparency International published the report. And so now we know that they were lying in their report. So they claim they are all for transparency here, but they will never publish their report. Now, if I know what happened, we publish all of the permits, and we publish all of the the licenses and the environmental permits since we got into office. And if I'm not wrong, I would suspect we are the ones who also made available.
But are you sure that that is your government made?
Yeah, well, are you sure?
Well,
are
I'm
you
asking
sure?
you if you're
no,
sure.
No, you listen to this reporter. The reporters have to also do their research. You're not sure, you just come here, walk in here just like this, and you asking me questions as though I'm your research person. You should say, on this date, APNU published the following documents. What are you doing? No, it's the laziness now.
No, well, I've seen
two,
documents a few days ago.
It is an attempt to hide all of the history of APNU. In the 5 years, you never had a dedicated press conference on oil and gas. That's one. We know that Granger never spoke about it, except in passing. Oh, I didn't read this document as yet. I don't know about the document as yet. Two, Trotman probably just gave a couple of comments. Nothing else in 5 years. They hid the signing bonus, then said they thought it was a gift. They hid the PSA. Only then after a big fight, it was available. That's their history of this sector. How come all of that doesn't get reflected? Oh, they might have made available, but you're not sure the field development plan.
All right, will your government make the other 4 available?
Huh?
Will your government make the other 4 that's approved available?
Ask the minister. I'm sure that you'll get all of that you need, the field development plan. And frankly speaking, who would read it? Glenn Lal? I can't even go through that. You need technical people. A field development plan for oil and gas sector. You need specialized people. They'll put Glenn Lal, the specialist, to read it. Who in your agency will read it if you see it? You ask the same thing about whether we publish the large contracts from mine, the large contracts for the gold and mining sector. We published all of those. You press us all the time, oh, the government is not transparent. We put everyone online. What did you do with them? Where are the analysis and all of that? Where is the analysis? It's just you wouldn't read it. You're incapable of reading it, not because you're not trained in this area. You're not trained. And Glenn Lal, but specialist Glenn Lal would be reading the field development plan. Yeah, he would think it's a play field, yes.
Well, that's my only question, but just,
Okay,
you said we are
right.
shareholders, so we got to ask something.
Yeah, no, but you're the shareholders, yeah, but the shareholders, if you represent the shareholders, one would think the shareholders would want you to ask sensible questions too. Sensible questions.
Hi, good afternoon. Trina Williams, Ghana Chronicle. I just have one question. We would have seen that GCOM has said that there are systems in place to ensure that elections next year run smoothly. However, we know that because of the 2020 events, a lot of voters lost confidence in the elections machinery. My question is, with GCOM issuing this statement, do you believe that there will be confidence restored in the elections machinery?
Yeah, sure.
And is your party satisfied with these systems?
So first of all, I've seen the comments in the public domain. So that was one thing that the AFC focused on. And everybody is saying it's an excuse now for losing the 2025 elections. They've always had excuses in the past. So except 2015, every other election, the list was flawed, or there were some shenanigans, etc. So first, the elections, in the last elections, everything went well during the day. People voted. The votes were counted at the place of poll. The statements of poll were issued. They had a robust system to ensure that people who were not supposed to vote didn't vote. The other list of 660,000 people, 460 voted around that level. So clearly the 200,000 people that that a claim might not be here or whatever else, that people did not get a chance to vote. Just about 2/3, just over 2/3 of the people voted. So that's clear. Not everyone on the list voted. The statements of poll came out. The statements of poll showed that we won the elections. Everything was there. It wasn't the machinery. It was these individuals who tried to subvert one aspect of the election process, which is clearly outlined. You have to use the statements of poll to tabulate the results at the regional level and declare those results, the RO. In 9 regions, they were accurately tabulated and announced by the ROs. In Region 4, Mingo, colluding with the Lowenfield and the others, decided to use a spreadsheet, not the statements of poll. You know the history of all of that. I'm not going to repeat it. They tried to steal the elections here. It's a few individuals. Those individuals, we stopped it. We went to the court. The international community worked, local organizations, everyone, the newspapers, we all exposed the plot. We had the recount done. And the recount showed that the PPP won the elections. They even tried to distort the recount. And at the end of the day, the system worked. So we identified the fraud and we fixed it. And we've identified the perpetrators through a COI that said these individuals were in a complicity, they were in a plot with APNU to steal the elections. That's what the results of the findings of the COI. So APNU was trying to steal the elections at this level here at Region 4 and through the declaration of false reports. Those individuals are now charged. So the system is working. Now, AFC again starts off everything. But one thing is critical. If I am a polling agent for APNU, I wouldn't want to work back with them. Because in the recount, there were over 2,000 polling agents for APNU who signed the statements of poll and showed that it was accurate. Almost all the statements of poll. They said those people were bought out by the PPP. Every one of them was bought out by the PPP to sign the statements of poll. So this is how APNU treats its people. People who work hard to look out for their interests. And therefore, we believe that the system is a robust one with the international observers, all the political parties observing the process, being in the polling places there, ensuring the votes are counted transparently, ensuring that people who are not on the list don't vote, people who are abroad don't vote because they can't vote. They can be on the list based on the Constitution, but they got to show up here to vote. All of that could be done, as was done in the past. AFC and the others are raising red herring because this is their only way of justifying what would be, what we know the outcome would be in the future. They're gonna lose the elections, and they know that too. Internally, they've been discussing this, that they would lose the elections, and so they always have to find something about that. And I'm happy that GCOM itself responded, that we didn't have to respond as PPP, that GCOM spoke about all the systems in place. And now with a new law that was passed, it's even worse because we put in some serious penalties now. And there's no room for capricious action on the part of the CEO. So he could go to jail for what Lowenfield did. The CEO could get into serious trouble. So now the CEO can't overnight be changing instructions like what Lowenfield did and Mingo. They told the people on the East Coast about 50 boxes. Don't put those documents in the boxes. although they should have gone into the boxes, the ballot boxes. You keep them separately. In the recount days, PPP stole those documents. So now you can't do that because there would be a manual prepared months before the elections that would outline which document has to go in the box, which one has to be given to the polling agent, and every polling place would have to be determined long before the elections, so that you don't, like in the night of the elections, the last elections, they were busy trying to establish polling places, because in some cases they were moving people from one village to vote in another village. I remember raising this issue with the Commonwealth Observer team that was headed by Owen Otter. And we made it clear for X number of voters, you have to have a polling place within proximity of their, a certain distance. So it's a fair system. People get a chance to vote. All of those things are in the new law now. So you would have less room for this. And more importantly now, in the new law, it says once the ballots are counted and the statements of poll are signed by everyone, all the party agents, the presiding officers, that has to be posted outside of the polling place, but it has to be published online before they do the tabulation at the regional level. So now every Guyanese, even before the ROs start doing their tabulation using the SOPs to give the regional total, every Guyanese would already take out their computers or their calculators and be adding down. You could add down and you know what the results are even before they complete the process, because GCOM now has to publish every statement of poll online, which is what we did 3 days after the elections. We uploaded, we had over 90-something% of our statements of poll. We uploaded them and showed that we won the elections. But APNU, up to today, remember, they can't find their SOPs. They have them hidden in a dungeon, the dungeons of Congress Place. They show that they won the elections. They have them. These are state secret. Only Ramjatan and Nigel Hughes and Cathy Hughes and the others have seen it. The Russians grabbed them. They're safeguarding them from the Russians. Remember, they said we brought in Russians to change the results. I don't know if the Russians were in the polling places. They can be very creative. APNU can be very creative. And once they latch on to a lie, it's hard to shake it from their heads, Very, very unique set of people at Congress Place. That little group there, a different crowd. Sometimes you wonder which universe they live in.